All right. Thank you once again, everyone, for joining us in our 5th of November 2025 Werewolf Technical Steering Committee meeting. It's been 3 weeks since our last meeting, since we had a long month last month. But we've got some cool development to talk about, and the longer than desired development schedule for 4.6.5. But I think there's good stuff in there now, so very
Yeah,
cool. Uh,
it's boring. To be honest,
it's
no, we shouldn't be that. We don't have really cool new stuff inside, like it doesn't cook you coffee or something like this. It's just, it's that what really, we, we
stuff
deal
we've
out
wanted for a while.
a lot of rough edges.
Yeah. So this is what's on the discussion for right now, but is there anything missing from this that we should add to the agenda before we get started?
I was thinking we may have a discussion on the timeline for splitting host overlays.
Okay.
Is there any need for discussion about you have something about SC here about that collaboration? The
Oh, yeah, so I'll put a note about that. So open HPC buff. Okay, excellent. So self-servingly, I will ask a quick question, which is, I would like to nominate Cedric, who people in here might already know. I think he's done some werewolf development in the past, but he's been doing uh, development from CIQ. He's a CIQ employee, and then he has a lot of history on the Singularity and now Aptainer side. He's doing more werewolf development these days, and I would like him to be able to participate in pull request reviews, which means enabling him as a contributor or a committer, or basically giving him right access.
Yeah.
So I bring that to the committee for approval or denial. I
If
saw a
that
thumbs up from
gets my
Chris.
stuff in faster, I'm absolutely in favor
You
of
know
it.
what? It is fewer people, or fewer things all bunched up on me, so I think that's a good thing. I think he was actually reviewing some of your stuff over the past couple days, wasn't he? Maybe not. Maybe you were reviewing his stuff. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah,
So,
oh, there's so many
but
Just
things.
yes,
don't delete release tags.
don't delete release tags. I'll make sure to pass on that advice. I saw a thumbs up from Chris and Tim. Jeremy, any concerns?
No, not at
Okay.
all.
Thank you for that. Next thing. So SC25, as Rose mentioned, we are having a BOF with the Open HPC guys. Very excited about that. I will be presenting, I guess, up to 10 minutes of Werewolf there. I'm mostly just going to do like what's new in 4.6 and talk about the collaboration work that we've done with OpenHPC to make sure it's ready for Rocky 10, that kind of thing. Mostly thanks to Tim, but what had to be done in order to make that work. There's not a lot of time, but there will be a lot of Q&A, I think, at the end is the main goal. Um, Rose, anything that we else that we need to discuss about that, or just that it
um,
is happening?
just a clarification. I have it on my calendar on Thursday, but I think you said it was Sunday. Do we have like a confirmation of what day and time it is?
No, no, those are two different events. So
Oh,
the BOF is on Thursday.
okay.
The thing on Sunday is the HPC Sys Pros workshop. And Dave Godlove and I are both presenting at that. And I am also talking about Werewolf there, so that's also good to talk about. Um, but I have 10 minutes there, and I'm going to be talking about the provision to disk support. It's a very high level just walkthrough that is mostly, you know what? I'll show that real quick. This is a good place for that. So it is a mostly tongue-in-cheek presentation. Oh, come on. There we go. That asks repeatedly, is werewolf stateful, or can it do stateful? And just keeps talking about the provisioning to disk support that we have, and that you can provision disks, and that you can provision the root thing to disk, uh, and how that works, but then what is coming up there, or what we're imagining it would be incrementally making it a real stateful boot. So roadmappy things are booting from EFI and making the initfs without having to do it out of band, and then closing things up because they're all preview features right now. But this is all pretty light, just getting up there and talking through this and where a little bit about what Warewulf is and how it works, and then how the provision to disk stuff works.
I think it would
So
be
that's
worthwhile to get a temperature in the room, what folks think of state or rebootable node images, because we might be chasing after only one or two people in the community that really care about that anymore.
I would love to. I think I'm going to have to do that by asking people to come talk to me afterwards, because they have allocated me 10 minutes total. And my recollection is this tends to be a pretty large group of people. So I don't think there will be a lot of opportunity for conversation in those 10 minutes.
Oh, I was
But
thinking temperature as in show your hands, raise of hands. Who
fair
thinks
enough.
that, stateful provisioning is a critical must-have, that kind of thing. And
Yeah,
that's where you can
maybe
also put in
I
some
appreciate that.
tongue-in-cheek comments about it at the same time.
All of those people can leave now. That kind of thing. Okay, great. Uh,
And if you think about what stateful is, it's a complicated question, right? Is it provision to
exactly.
disk? You can be stateless, but still be able to reboot without the provisioner, right? That's another thing as well.
People keep saying, does it do stateful now? And I keep having to say, what do you mean? What do you actually want? Because that means lots of different things to lots of different people.
That's where
Um,
temperature could be. What does stateful mean to you? Does it mean I'm not provisioning to ramp, or go from that direction?
yeah, and then at the very end, if stateful means something to you that we didn't even mention here, please find me after, and we'll talk about that kind of thing. Great. Okay. Um, Maybe Tim, anything else that you think we should talk about with the OpenHPC side of this and the BOF?
Just who uses Warewulf and OpenHPC?
No, I
Show of
just mean
hands.
like anything else we need to talk about to prepare for participating in the BOF or anything like
I think
that.
it'll be fine.
Okay, cool. But then the last thing is here, our next meeting is scheduled during SC, so I recommend that we cancel that.
Okay.
So who is going to be at SC? So Tim, Rose, Jeremy, will you be there?
No, not this year.
Not this year. Shane, will you be there?
Not this year.
No. And how about Ian
Sadly, no.
or Simit? Okay. But I'm asking because I'm hoping that at some point we can gather whoever wants to. What we did the last couple of years is at the CIQ booth and just talk about. I basically have a little meeting like this there, but we might not have enough people to do that. So we'll see. I'll send an email out.
I would do it
Or
regardless.
yeah, fair enough. But I will cancel the next meeting, this meeting, rather than try and do it during SC. And then we'll try and do something at the show. Oh. I'm gonna do this, or I'll just write it down. Next thing that I have on the list, Ian, I saw you and Tim talking furiously about Debian and Ubuntu packaging. So, how's it going, and what help do you need?
Well, thankfully Tim tested it and it works. It installs. There's some details just to deal with some funky Ubuntu and potentially Debianisms. Like DNS mask won't start off the shelf only because by default systemd resolved is doing DNS, and so they conflict. and there's multiple ways to deal with it. And I guess we just need to find out which is the preferred way to deal with it. You can have them coexist. You can have DNS mask use an alternate port. And just figuring out the easiest way to deploy that so that the change can be made and packaged up, or an overlay built that's not too intense.
Mhm.
And then the other thing I found out, the DNS mask config generated by Warewulf is missing a line, which is why I couldn't get my nodes to boot. It defines a tag for legacy BIOS, but then does not provide a boot action if that tag is set. So basically, Warewulf didn't know which file to send.
So we are missing this because it works for EFI but does not work for legacy BIOS. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
And my VMware, my VirtualBox node to present themselves as legacy BIOS,
Sure.
so it was
Yeah.
not getting the file.
I was just trying to think about why we had not noticed this before, but yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks for
so
that.
I added the debug, and then I saw, oh, it's claiming that it's using BIOS, and there's no boot action for that.
Yeah.
Other than that, the path. By default, if you build from source code, it drops Werewolf and user local at Etsy.
Mhm.
Oh, actually, is user local for most of it. And I guess that's just, we just need to choose, do we want to keep it like that, or do we want to align with others and put it in a consistently expected path?
Yeah, it should not be installed by a package into user local, in my
Okay.
opinion.
We can,
The correct place may not match what the RPM is currently doing.
Mhm.
One, because the RPM might not be doing the right thing, but also because it might be the right thing might be different in a
Mhm.
Debian distribution, but it should not be user local.
Okay. It's weird that that's where Debian and Ubuntu put it by default.
Well, I think it's just
Or is it-
it's just where that's the default setting when you do a
Okay.
make install. So that's just what
Okay.
it's doing. If you look at the RPM, it overrides it during
Okay.
the RPM build.
Then I can go figure out best. Well, we can figure out. It's not my decision. It's a consensus decision what path we want to use.
Yeah,
But-
that
No, go ahead.
I'm a file system hierarchy standard guy, so I would go look and see that, but I would probably diverge from it when appropriate if Ubuntu is diverging from it. Just follow whatever Ubuntu packages tend to do would be my recommendation.
Okay.
I believe Debian has a document on where things should go.
Yeah, I was gonna ask
If Debian has the variables that same style variables that
Everybody else
RPMs
uses.
have.
It'd be nice if they do, because then hopefully getting it into the pipeline in GitHub would be a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll go check, because you linked the pipeline. You sent me the link to the pipeline, Jonathan, so I can go pour through that and compare that against Debian's recommended, and see if I can propose a good solution for that.
Awesome.
And then, like I
Excellent.
said, so hopefully we can get it into the pipeline, and then I don't have to build it anymore.
That'd be great.
So,
Yes, it would.
Just super quick question. I know it's you. I think you answered. Why is DNS mask and systemd resolve conflict? It seems like
Because-
one's a client, one's a server.
Because they're both using port 53 for DNS service.
Oh.
So DNS mask won't fire up because it sees that systemd resolved is using it already.
And
Okay.
resolve D
Oh,
is
actually-
a resolver.
Yeah,
And
it's
so
yeah,
It's responding. Okay.
right.
yeah.
So
It-
so the options are disable systemd resolved, have DNS mask use like 5353, and then there's different things you can do to get them to coexist. You can have DNS mask listen to systemd resolved, and you can have systemd resolved listen to DNS mask.
You
Can
can
we
also tell it not to bind to the
Right.
0.0.0.0, and then it'll
Right.
bind to specific IP addresses.
Right, and I think that's
or interfaces.
yeah. So I think that's probably the safest easiest way implementation is just to have DNS mask bind interfaces, and then whatever interface you tell DNS mask to use, period, that's the only port it will, the only interface port combo it will deal with.
I hope this question is not as foolish as I know it sounds rhetorically, but is it possible to run DNS mask and just not run a DNS service out of it?
Yes.
Yes.
So could we just have the Warewulf config that it generates
Not do
turn off
DNS?
DNS?
Yes. Yes.
Although it is nice to use the internal
It's nice
DNS
to
server.
use and have the DNS feature of DNS mask. It's called DNS mask.
That's what I was saying. I know.
It's in the name.
It's not hard to have it just bind DNS to the internal interface, because we have that already inside of the overlay variables. You know, earlier I had requested, can we get the interface of that? That is a inferior solution doing the interface. It's better to do the IP address because of the issues that we're seeing in Debian. And Debian wraps it in some horrible wrapper, which you have to modify their configuration on the wrapper in order to get the proper flags to go through, which is really super annoying because it doesn't do drop-ins like most other sane configurations. It's in etc config DNS mask.
So do I understand properly that systemd resolve D listens on localhost, so we're thinking that binding DNS mask to the cluster address won't or will resolve
No,
it?
it doesn't. It binds to 127.0.0.3 and 127.0.0, sorry, 53 and 54. What happens is DNS mask will bind
It's
to
0.0.0.0. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, regardless, binding DNS mask specifically to the cluster interface would then prevent the conflict, I think is what you're saying.
Correct. Yes.
You can also bind it to 127.0.0.1 if you want to as well.
Yeah.
But there's a couple options you have to modify in etc default DNS mask to override that stupid wrapper, to
Right.
tell it not to inject a whole bunch of options into DNS mask.
Okay.
So we can look and see which one's easiest to deal with.
If Ian, I dropped
Yeah.
what I'm using in there. You may want to take a look at that one.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw that. So
I don't know what to do from a a package perspective on modifying the etc config file, because you can't drop overrides on that one.
right.
So Christian is adding something at this moment in our agenda.
I didn't want to mess up with Debian, so but it's actually the next point.
Look at that. It's the next thing we're talking about.
Right, it's magic. So it's I didn't want yeah. So
No, I think we're good, right? Do we know what we need
yeah,
for DNS mask, or is there more to discuss?
We should have. I don't know. We don't use them, but when people now starting more and more systems, we need. So we need the arch in the profile and node, so that you can set it, so that we can then really get a difference when in the templates that, for example, it then uses the right templates. We might need own templates for x86 and Arch, and also sometimes you want to have unique IDs for every node. It's this system ID, which is not always created correctly if it comes from an image, so that we can also store that one. Just create
like
them.
etc machine ID.
Yeah.
Okay.
You could use it for that.
Yeah.
And I intend to use it for that if you want to. I just would to say we now create them in datastructure.go. I think it's somewhere, it's node datastructure.go. You know where I mean, Jonathan.
Yeah. Let me ask two questions. So, well, it's the same question for both of them. What is the value of having first class variables for these things versus just doing it with tags?
Because it's a first class variable from the logic. It's something so fundamental, especially the arch is so fundamental, and tags are good for experienced users, but we will have also inexperienced users want to see that. And with that, we emphasize a bit that so if you look through and you don't see and you glance through the documentation, you and I, we can do it with tags.
Yeah.
But not if you are just going through the documentation thinking, and then you suddenly think, I see nowhere arch. They don't mean to use to mix arches, which you definitely can.
Hmm.
And if we now have an arch variable, the thing I didn't add it, or it's not added yet, it's that it also needs to be a kind of for the image. It would be better the image would carry the arch. But that's kind of too complicated, and also WW client is arch specific, so just as it added as a first class variables, it's kind of it's not really blowing up the code.
Yeah, I think I feel that way about Arch. I'm less convinced about UUID, but I think UUID, are you maybe advocating for that to be automatically generated rather than something that would have to be specified?
Yeah, a node creation. When we change the node creation, yeah, okay, then postpone the UUID there was this thing open, I think, from Jeremy. No, it was not Jeremy. Timothy, about the net tag add and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, not
which is
working.
Yeah, and if that's in the creation code, so then also create a UUID, which
So
yeah.
you're saying it gets statically created in the config, but when you add a node, it inserts it
When you
in
add
the
a
node
node,
stanza.
a UUID will be created, and you could also reset it if you want.
I can see that.
And then it could be really you can use it or you can leave it, but it's not so that we
Yeah.
then it will be the UUID when we create it. This will really spawn a bit more kind of clutter in the configuration files, because you have then one line node per node in the configuration file, which is for 1,000 nodes, 1,000 lines more. Whereas the arch, if you don't set it, you won't see it.
Yeah. Well, you just assume it's the arch of the server at that point, right?
Yeah, it's the arch of the node.
Yeah.
And just
Well, that's different because when you're building an overlay, you don't know what the arch of the node will be.
oh, that's right, yeah.
That's why I've been hesitant to do this in the past, because people, the minute you start talking about it, people just assume that it should be able to know what the arch is. But since the
No, yeah,
overlays are built,
that's not possible to know the
yeah,
arch when we build the overlay.
in order to do that, we need overlays that build dynamically when they're requested, rather than because then the node could say, "Hey, this is my arch. Please give me an overlay that matches." But as long as we're statically building overlays before the node is booting, you can't do that.
Do you think it makes sense to have target arch be like a property of a overlay?
Right now, I the vast majority of overlays should be generic because they're just config files. And when the config file is not generic, it should be because it can be templated, and so then it's generic again. So far, like the only one that we have that wouldn't be or even I guess isn't, is
don't
the
add it.
Werewolf client
Sorry,
stuff.
then I gutted it. Yeah, then it was a good discussion. We should think different about it.
So I can see the value of saying, like, having a way to say this overlay is for this arch, but
The only
right now
way
we only
would
have
be
one example of
something
it.
like we could think of, but that's shown us just that we have specific overlays for specific arch, which will be then have another pattern, that it would not be like something like issue.ww, but issue.ww.arch.
Well, Well, at that point, I think what I'd want to do is have an overlay. Right now, we have a single rootfs directory. I'd want to have different rootfs directories inside of the overlay for different arches. And then you could have a single overlay with a single name that just did a dynamic thing depending on what arch it's targeting.
Yeah, and then soft link them or something like this. Yeah, that might be, yeah, that's even the better solution, that we say, okay, we make the rootfs generic, and then it would be not rootfs.
It could be like
dot something, yeah.
rootfs.x86 or rootfs.arch or
Yeah,
something like that.
perhaps that's the best solution, yeah. rootfs x86, and then, you know, if nothing is in there, if it's just rootfs, it's
generic.
generic.
Are you thinking about using this for shipping small binaries in the overlays as well, so that they are?
And that's what we're doing with
architectural
Warewulf
specific?
Client, right?
Well, they have the uname stuck on the end of them.
They do right now, but if we did it dynamic, you could imagine having a single Warewulf client
Yeah.
that has multiple rootfs's and then does something dynamic inside of it.
Yeah.
I could see that, but
But would maybe just using a tag for the rare times that you're conditioning on Arch and go from there?
well, and that now we're back to the beginning of the conversation where the tags are just slightly less discoverable, right? So if you're depending on them within core overlays, it might make sense for them to be a first class thing rather than a tag.
But there's no core overlays that use Arch right now, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, you just you have to tell it which overlay to use for the Warewulf client stuff. It's kind of de facto an Arch tag, which overlay you're applying to it.
I mean, if there's only one or two cases of that, I would not tend to build a whole new infrastructure for that one or two cases.
And that's the thing, like for the most part, it shouldn't matter. Where it does matter is which image to send. That of course is Arch specific, but until we had like dynamic and multi-arch images, which we do not currently have, then it's also not pertinent.
Sort of side tangent, does Go do fat binaries with multi-arch?
I tried to, so when I was doing the Warewulf client stuff, my LLM of choice specifically took me down a rabbit hole for that, but the project it was looking at was specifically an Apple thing that does like the universal binaries for Apple. It looks like that's an open source project that you can use, but it's not like an internal Go thing.
Gotcha. Not just one flag.
Yeah. Whereas it was very simple to just cross compile for ARM and x86, and suddenly I had different binaries and it was beautiful.
Yeah. That was a nice solution.
Christian, do you have more discussion here or just note taking from the discussion?
No, I'm just note taking. That's really,
Okay.
I
Thank you
don't
for doing
just
that.
want to, when I'm writing it down, I won't forget it.
Yeah.
Perhaps
I did have a comment about the UUID. That might be useful when we go more stateful, because then if the UUIDs match, you don't blow out the system. But if they don't match, then you can blow out the system. It gives you an idea of
that's a good point.
when it's
Yeah,
been
that's a
configured
good idea.
once.
Yeah.
And
This
then
is my
We could
config.
even, but that would be higher dark magic, find out if we could store the UUID not on disk, but somewhere in as a EFI. And
Well, if it's
then you
stateful, then
see.
you want it on the disk, so you just compare the disk
No,
version.
no. If it's, yeah, perhaps stateful on the disk, no, but then this would be mean a UUID per disk. What I mean is we store it as a EFI var, and if it's in the EFI and we don't, and it doesn't match, we know we can blow up the disks. Oh,
Yep.
yeah. And because if we would store it on the disk, we have to think about on which disk and where on the disk and what happens if the disk goes away.
Yeah, I was thinking that comparison would be later in the boot
Yeah,
process,
no,
but no, it's got to be early.
It's got to be early.
It's a good point, but yeah, that's perhaps also the way we will go down, because storing something in the EFI vars is kind of, documentation is sparse and dragons are there and everything.
But that could, once that work's done, you could also put in secrets there to to start being a little bit more secure.
Yes,
The
that or
secrets,
in a
no,
TPM.
not the secrets. The secrets we will put in the TPM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
That's
is
a
true.
different thing. The UEFI vars is a different thing as the TPM. In the TPM, you can already store variables and you can get a key out of it. It's just that it's complicated a bit, but it's doable.
All right.
But you can look at the Xcat code. They're exactly doing it with some shell script magic. And I tried to. I had a so I could do it. The main thing why I did not go down this direction more is that even if we have the secret then in the TPM, I don't know how to use that secret to enable secure communication because I'm not a web guy. If
Well,
the
so-
IQ has a web
yeah.
guy who knows, oh yeah, this is now the key. Now I know how to create this TLS certificate, and then it's always then I simply don't like to create TLS certificates, and I don't know how they. So I know how they work and all that kind of stuff, but I just don't like it, and nobody
We'll
paid
do
me.
it with Munge.
Hmm?
We'll do it with Munge instead.
No, kill Munch immediately.
Oh, I've locked my screen. There we go. All right. We've had several merges since our last meeting. Some of the guys from the customer support group here at CIQ contributed some stuff to select the speed of an IPMI interface. Thanks for a CVE fix, Christian. I think that was mostly just updating a dependency, right?
Yeah.
Um, as a request from OpenHPC, we now have the ability to manage the SE Linux context of the TFTP directory. This was for when we have DNS masks, so good to have that in. We've talked about this a little bit, but we have architecture-specific Warewulf client overlays and a generic, well, one that's for the same arch as the server, and then one that's specific to x86 or ARM. So this fixes the last remaining barrier for people doing multi-arch Warewulf deployment, which is really cool. Fix for the Docker stuff. Fix in the API, and this is from Cedric, by the way. So thank you to Cedric there. And then this was something that I did while investigating this. My first implementation of SE Linux management in Warewulf Client was shelling out to like ChangeCon and things that shelling out to commands when there is a Golang library for doing all of that. So I just went ahead and used the Golang library that I found in the meantime. So I'm happy about those things. I don't think we need discussion on them, but any questions about any of it or any concerns about any of it? All right. So the first one on this list for things that are pending, most of which are assigned to the current release. I am reviewing Christian's tags.
Just merge it. You don't have to review it. It's from me.
What?
Just merge it.
I'm working on it. It frightens me, but it's
Hit the
good.
button.
I can't
It's
just
not
merge it because
frightening.
literally the first time I ran it, it panicked at me, Christian. So I fixed that. But it's very, very cool. And I am actually looking at it today. I would like to have it merged today if I can. So far, I don't have any concerns, but I'm working on that. Christian, and I think is this Shane's PR? Is that what's going on here? Tell me about this, or not me, talk about this Xadders thing. What's going on here?
Sure. So the motivation being, for me personally, just looked into this because there were some stuff in one of the overlays that I wanted to solve a permissions issue with using ACLs. But there's been other people hitting issues with Xadders in the past. I think somebody somewhat recently, but one of the examples is there are, binaries on the system that require certain system capabilities to do what they do as a limited user. And those capabilities are not captured when we transform an image from a container image into a werewolf image. And likewise, when overlays are captured, there were actually a couple reasons for that. One, when I have to look at the PR to actually, but there's a bit when we copy the image to a location before we actually transform it into an image that wasn't capturing extended attributes. So I had to write a routine that would go through and copy the X adders from one tree to another. And then there's a step in the I think it's somewhere in WW init where we copy the contents of the image into where it's going to exist on the node sometime before we do the switch root. And
Yeah, in the first state, in the single stage boot anyway, it does
Yeah.
that.
that wasn't capturing X adders either. But then also during overlay creation, we needed to capture the X adders. And my first pass at it just, blindly wrote all of them into one file, which doesn't really work terribly well when you've got multiple overlays. And the image overlays themselves, they were overriding each other. So then put that into an X adders directory inside of Warewulf or inside of /Warewulf. And they're named just xadder dash and then a SHA-256 hash of the overlay /image name. Mostly because if you look at how those names get rendered out at the time, there's a lot of underscores and other characters in there that might not necessarily play nicely or just, add complications. So something that's a fixed character set seemed like a better use for me or a better fit to me. But yeah, hopefully this will, solve the case where there are binaries or whatever that have specific capabilities they need to be captured. And it might also save us a bit with SE Linux relabeling in the base image because it will capture those SE Linux labels in the image. We don't do that with overlays, or at least I think I explicitly mask them for overlays because there's no guarantee that the SE Linux labels at the overlay location will be what we want to be on the node anyway.
Yeah.
Plus also there's the manipulating SE Linux contexts outside of certain contexts is like expressly forbidden, so it'll fail.
Yeah. Awesome. Is this your perspective? This is ready for merge or ready for review at least? I know Christian's looking at it, and I see that I did review it at one point, and I remember now that was the bit about the overwritten file.
Yep.
But so I need to review that. But
definitely, I want people to look at it and
Okay.
make sure that I'm not being like completely ridiculous in my assumptions or way of going about this. So I'd say ready for review, probably not exactly ready for merge yet because I'm assuming there are issues that will be found. And my personal opinion is that I probably should add in some tests to at least verify, that the X adders are being captured as expected.
Cool.
I was running into some weird failures locally that I wasn't hitting in the CI on GitHub, and I'm not sure if that's just like a Golang runtime difference between what I'm writing this in locally or if something else is going on.
The Golang runtime environment, or sorry, Golang, the CI runtime environment is really weird on GitHub now, where somehow, presumably with capabilities of some kind, you're both not root but also able to install packages, and it's kind of weird. Okay. Anything more to discuss on the X adders PR that's pending? Yes.
So from a high level perspective, that approach kind of scares me. Just has the experienced person in me kind of scared. Just adding complexity. One alternative thing to consider might be going to tar and storing mem. I know it adds a requirement that you would need the two-stage stage provisioning, but we're going to that more often. Then it would simply be you would just tar it up, and then you would untar the overlays and you untar the image in the two-stage.
That was what kind of got me asking several weeks ago about what the eventual plan was, if we were going to go to like two-stage Dracket boots, and then me wanting to come up with a more immediate solution.
I mean, the 2-stage is supported now. It's just not the only thing.
Yeah, and we'd have to handle it in a lot more of an exceptional manner.
Yeah. Which is why in that slideshow I showed earlier, one of my top level goals is stop having these things be previews and just actually make them real.
Mhm.
Yeah,
But
I
two-stage to RAMFS does not add that much more complexity to the whole disk side of the provisioning process, right? It only adds the complexity of creating that bracket.
yes, it is the creation of the Dracket that makes it emphatically preview right now, that there's
Yeah.
no first class way to do it. You have to do it by execing into the image. So Tim, it's the generation of the Xadders manifest and then reapplying it after the fact. That's what's got you concerned.
Yeah, that you're gonna walk the tree, you're gonna store it in a file, then you're gonna, those added steps kind of take away the simplicity of Werewolf in terms of it's just a tree that you tar up and or CPIO up and send to the other side, right? Now we're adding these additional steps in between and these additional files that get carried out of band.
Well, I mean,
That being
they're
said,
in,
I have not read the code, so
they're in band, I would argue, but their application is, an additional step for sure. Like the original, I went through a couple of ideas how I might do this, and one of them was distribute the Xadders as like a separate thing, and I'm like, oh, that's way too complex. I should just slip them into the image, which is ultimately what ended up happening, or
I
happening.
meant out of band as in it's a file. You copy the information into a file. It's not on the actual file system or in the tar or whatever, right?
It's not in there as an Xadder in the image, yeah. Officially.
It can't be. In order
Yeah.
to, it would have to be tar.
Yeah.
But and the tars preserve like SE Linux contexts?
Yes,
Yeah.
they do.
Because they're just extended attributes.
Okay.
Yep. So it
They're,
would just mean that the Dracket would be the preferred way of doing it for people who, or you would need that for people who want to do SE Linux.
yeah.
My argument was if it's my kind of subtle argument is if you're using SE Linux, then you probably should be sophisticated enough to use two-stage. If you want nice and simple, then just use the non capabilities. I guess it's not
Oh.
SE Linux, it's capabilities as well, but
Yeah, and increasingly the single stage is not nice and simple either because it breaks in subtle and surprising ways.
yeah.
This is definitely a tangent, but I went down. We had someone that was hitting that recently. I think it was a customer, and it sent me. Oh yeah, it was a customer, and it sent me down another. Can we please figure out why this is happening? Because I've had a mental model in my head, but never a clear verification. And the current thought process is that you actually could get past the size limit by breaking the image up into multiple CPIOs and then just loading them into memory separately. And the kernel handles it properly. And so if you broke the image up into like 512 meg chunks and had iPixie load them in one at a time, that it should be fine. But then I was unable to reproduce the problem in my test environment to verify that the solution worked. And the
Yeah.
whole thing was a mess. But
Some of it is just really, really weirdly platform specific or like specific
yeah.
BIOS version specific. And
It is, and I think that there's another project called Fog that's very similar, faces all the same problems that we do. It's a single stage bootloader. So they hit the same problems, and I think it boils down to it that a lot of BIOSes just don't meet all the standards that they're supposed to.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody expects to load a 36 gig image over Pixie.
Over
All right.
TFTP, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's at least not TFTP. By the time it's doing a large thing, it's on HTTP.
That's true.
Yes.
Raspberry Pis don't support the TFTP wraparound until recently, so you could only load a 42 megabyte image. So,
But I will say that no matter what happens, we will not get rid of our single stage boot because that was one of the main reasons the Werewolf 4 project started. But we use the two-stage boot all the time because we hit the same issues.
I agree. I think it needs to stay there because it's a wonderful way of setting up a simple environment.
I just want to
Yeah.
fix it. Like I want it to work, even if two stage is better. And I want it to stop breaking in subtle ways. So I still
Yeah.
want to figure out what's going on with it.
The biases will always be broken. There'll be certain environments that you cannot
Yeah.
fix.
I'm not going to name vendors or anybody else, but that's true. And but actually, I like Jonathan's idea about splitting it up because I've always wondered, do we really need to be rebuilding all these overlays, or is there any way we could just send all the overlays down as blocks? Because I agree that the Linux command line will take any number of
Well,
images.
that's a different thing, but
Okay.
yes. All right, we got two. We're running out of time. We got two more PRs to look at here. So one of these is allowing setting the MTU and MAC address on bonds. I think I was arguing against the MAC address thing because that just means it's not right. I need to review this again. I don't know the current state of it or if it has changed since the last time I looked at it. It looks like it has not. Christian, were you looking at this one too? Yeah, it looks like
Yeah,
you.
but that was the problem. I don't know the.
Setting the MTU on the bond is correct, but we should not.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't think this is right.
yeah. I don't know how the network manager, and I'm not too good into bonds. If the configuration which the templates creates is correct in the end.
This should be easy enough for me to look at and review again. I'll put my
Yeah,
name next to it. But
and I don't have any hardware right now to test that.
my default Werewolf test environment has two network interfaces specifically so I can test bonding since it was broken for so long. So that should be okay. And then this one, Christian, you've reviewed it. Anything and it needs a change. Oh, you're just waiting on changelog and stuff, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
this one should be good in a minute.
Yeah, it looks good, and it's kind of just adding the stuff for the oh, he should also go to the contributors.
Yeah.
It's adding some perhaps you should also just have a short look on it because it's touching this SF code, which I don't know how it works. But I checked the option, it seems to be okay, and it's the template looks good.
I will put my name next to it. All right. Anything else we need to discuss before we call it? All right. Thank you once again. This has been a great discussion, very productive. I guess it'll be 4 weeks before we see each other again on here, but I'll look forward to it and hopefully we can get something scheduled for at the show and then I'll send a report out or some kind of meeting minutes or notes or something from that to Slack when it happens. All right. See y'all.
Ciao.
Great day.